A device on a rooftop in Tokyo concentrates raw sunlight 10,000 times, strips out the ultraviolet and the heat, and sends what is left down a glass wire thin enough to thread through a wall. The company behind it, Himawari Engineering, has spent more than 40 years on a single idea, that the light deep inside a building should be the actual sun, not an electric imitation of it. Its system, called Himawari, tracks the sun from sunrise to sunset on about 2 watts of power, then delivers full-spectrum daylight to offices, hospital wards, and basements that have never had a window. If it works the way the people working on it promise, then interior lighting could be on the verge of a revolution. We are going to trace that light from the lens on the roof to the fixture in the ceiling, and find out whether piping the sun through a cable truly will be the future of lighting our buildings. We now spend more than 90% of our lives indoors, and most of that time is lit by something that was never the sun. A fluorescent tube or an LED panel throws out a flat wall of light with a narrow, spiky spectrum behind it. Your eyes can see by it, but your body does not read it the way it reads daylight. And believe it or not, that has a huge impact on how your body functions. There is a set of cells in your retina, separate from the ones you see with, that respond mainly to bright blue rich light and feed straight into the brain's master clock. They are what daylight uses to set your alertness, your mood, and your sleep. Sit under dim, static indoor light all day, and that signal never properly arrives, which is part of why windowless work can leave people foggy and out of rhythm. And architecture has made this worse, not better. Modern buildings are deep, and the floors inside them are wide, so more and more of the floor space sits far from any outside wall. A skylight only helps the top floor, and cutting one in lets heat and glare pour through with the light. For everything below that, the answer has always been more electric lighting. Bringing the real sun to those buried rooms is the problem Himawari set out to solve. The system goes back to one person. Dr. Himawari was a professor in the Science and Engineering department at Keio University, and he spent years convinced that sunlight should be carried into a building the way water or electricity already was. He founded Himawari Engineering in 1978 and launched the first working Himawari in 1979, naming it after the Japanese word for sunflower, the flower that turns to follow the sun. Mori died in 1990, but the company has carried the idea forward, and it now sits within Tokyo's Mori Building Group. What he built rests on 3 pieces working together. The first is the collector, a domed unit on the roof packed with an array of Fresnel lenses. Those lenses do nothing but concentrate, squeezing the incoming sunlight down to a tiny, intense point of focus, around 10,000 times brighter than the open sky. A small motor turns the whole array to follow the sun across the day, guided by a light sensor and a clock that knows the sun's path. When a cloud passes, the clock keeps the lenses aimed at where the sun will reappear, so the system is ready the moment it clears. The second piece is a clever use of basic physics. When light bends through a lens, the colors do not all bend by the same amount. This is called chromatic aberration, and it is usually a flaw to be corrected. Himawari turns it into a filter. The ultraviolet, the visible light, and the infrared heat each come to a focus at a slightly different spot. By placing the tip of the fiber exactly where the visible light lands, the system catches only that, while the harmful UV and the unwanted heat focus elsewhere and never enter the cable. The third piece is how the light travels. From that focal point, the sunlight runs into high-purity quartz glass optical fiber, bouncing along the inside of the strand by total internal reflection. Quartz holds onto visible light over distance far better than cheaper plastic fiber, so the beam can be threaded through walls and ceilings and around corners to wherever it is needed, then released through a fixture that looks much like a normal downlight. The standard home and office unit carries 12 of these fiber cores and runs its tracking on only about 2 watts, less than the bulb inside your fridge. Because what arrives is real, unbroken sunlight rather than a manufactured spectrum, it scores above 95 on the color rendering index, the scale that measures how truthfully a light shows color, where the sun itself sits at 100. That is the whole point. Skin, food, fabric, and artwork all look the way they look outdoors, and your body treats the light, to a real degree, as the daylight it was waiting for. Set against an ordinary LED panel, the case for Himawari is not about brightness, and stated plainly, the LED wins on raw cost and convenience every time. A good LED fixture costs a few dollars, switches on at midnight, and never depends on the weather. Himawari does none of that. Where it pulls ahead is in what the light actually is. Even the best high CRI LEDs are an approximation, a spectrum engineered to look like daylight, and the cells that run your body clock can tell the difference. Himawari is not an approximation, because it is the sun, delivered whole. For a hospital ward, an office floor, or a vertical farm where the quality of the light changes how people heal, focus, or grow, that distinction is the entire value. It is worth being clear about the rival approach too, because Himawari is not alone. Sweden's Parents built a similar fiber optic system, and the older idea of piping real sun through fiber has been tried by several firms. The shared weakness is the same one Himawari carries. It is sunlight, so it only flows while the sun is up. There is also the honest comparison against simply cutting a hole in the roof. A skylight is far cheaper and brings in real daylight too, but it dumps heat and glare into the room, it can only serve the space directly beneath it, and it cannot reach a basement at all. Himawari trades that simplicity away to put controlled, heat-free sunlight exactly where a skylight could never go. The reason this is drawing fresh attention now comes down to what we have recently learned about light and the body. The blue sensitive clock cells in the retina were only firmly identified in the last couple of decades, and the research since has turned daylight from a comfort into a measurable health input. Studies have linked good daytime light exposure to better sleep, mood, and alertness, which moves a system like this from a nice idea towards something a hospital or employer can justify on outcomes. At the same time, the way we build keeps stranding people further from a window. Cities are getting denser and floor plates are getting deeper, so the share of indoor space with no daylight at all keeps climbing. A technology that can reach those interior cores answers a problem that is growing, not shrinking. Energy pressure pushes in the same direction. Lighting accounts for close to a fifth of the world's electricity use, a huge load that buildings are now under real pressure to cut. A system that lights a room with the sun for the cost of running a 2-watt tracker fits neatly into that push, even if it can only do the job during daylight hours. For all that promise, Himawari has serious ground to cover before it turns up in ordinary buildings, and the first obstacle is the price. A fiber optic system starts around $8,000, and a large installation can climb past $100,000. That is the cost of precision ground lenses, sun tracking mechanics, and high purity quartz fiber, none of which is cheap to make. Bringing the price down depends on manufacturing that fiber and those optics at far higher volume than this niche has ever needed, which is a real bet rather than a certainty. Then there is the install itself. This is not a fixture you screw in, because it means a collector on the roof, fiber routed down through the structure, and fixtures aligned at the other end, all fitted by a trained team over several days. In a new building, you can design that path in from the start, but retrofitting it into an existing one is far more involved and far more expensive. What would ease this is builders treating an optical light path like plumbing or wiring run in during construction, so the system can be added later as a simple connection. The deepest limit, though, is built into the physics and cannot be engineered away. Himawari delivers the sun, so it only works while the sun is shining. The light dims and shifts color through the day. It runs warm near dawn and dusk, then turns cooler and bluer at noon. On a heavily overcast day, there is little direct beam to concentrate at all. After dark, it gives nothing. So, it can never be the only light in a room. The realistic design pairs it with electric fixtures that fill in when the sun is weak or gone, and that hybrid setup adds cost and complexity of its own. Even with those caveats, the technology has a longer track record than its obscurity suggests. More than 1,000 Himawari systems have already been installed across Japan and parts of Europe. The company keeps refining the collector and fiber rather than chasing a single dramatic leap. Researchers have tested it in real offices and found it can carry enough daylight deep into a windowless room to meet both the visual and the body clock needs of the people working there. Its reach is also widening through distributors abroad, including in markets like India, where strong year-round sun makes the economics far kinder. For most of us, the wait is not really about whether the technology works, since it plainly does, but about the price falling far enough and the install becoming simple enough that it escapes the world of premium architecture. The likeliest first homes are exactly where the value is sharpest now, in hospitals, research labs, and high-end buildings, with everything else following as the cost curve bends. What Mori built is not really a lamp. and that is the thing to hold on to. For decades, the rule was that a room had to sit against an outside wall to get the actual sun, and everywhere else made do with an electric stand-in. Himawari quietly breaks that rule, carrying the real spectrum, heat stripped out, into the one place daylight was never supposed to reach. The price is still steep and the sun still sets, so for now, this belongs to the buildings that can justify it rather than the average home. But as the cost of the optics falls and the science on daylight and health keeps firming up, the case for treating sunlight as something you can route through a building only gets stronger. If you want to keep up with the tech quietly reshaping how our buildings work, subscribe and follow along, because there is a lot more of it coming.